Hello and welcome back. In this video, we'll be tackling the modifiers exercise. Now, let's check what are the requirements for this exercise. Number one, it says implement the modifier to allow only the owner to call the function. Now, what does this mean? If we scroll down, we can see that this function has the pause function, has this only owner here, which is basically referring to this modifier. The unpaused function also has the same thing. Now, what does this do? Let's write some code. Require msg.sender is equal to owner. Now, what does this do? Here we are saying require that the caller of this function, that is the current user, the address of the user is equal to the address of the actual owner of this contract. So what happens is when it hits this pause function, when the owner calls this function, when a user calls this function, the pause function, it goes back and hits this modifier function. It runs all that is inside this function. So it says the first line here, require that the caller of this function, that is the current user, the address of the current user is the address of the owner of the contract, and if this fails, then it will revert and it will not continue executing the function, and it will not allow the user to go into this pause function and change the value of the paused variable. But if it succeeds, then it will go and hit this underscore, and what this underscore does is it basically says, okay, now go back and run subsequent commands, subsequent lines of code. So when it hits this underscore, it will go back into this pause function and it will run this line of code right here. That is what this does. Now, the second thing is that it says implement the modifier to check if the contract is not paused. And you can see here it says use the not paused modifier. So let's create a modifier not paused, just like this. It's called here. Let's just copy and paste the function name. Now here we need to check. Let's try this. Require that paused is equal to false. Then we need to put this underscore, and now we are good to go. So what this does, let's put this modifier here, not paused. So what happens here is when a user calls this transfer function, it goes back and hit this not paused modifier. So it comes here and then it runs this line of code. It says, okay, now what is the value of paused? Is the value of paused equal to false? If it's not the case, if the value of paused is true, then it goes back and it refuses to run subsequent functions, subsequent lines of code inside this function, and it returns an error to the user. But if the paused variable is equal to false, then it goes back, that it continues, and then it hits this underscore. And what I told you is that this underscore basically just says, okay, run subsequent lines of code, and because this has succeeded. So it comes after, when it hits this underscore, it comes and then it runs this line of code, and all the lines of code inside this transfer function. So now that's basically what it does. Now let's try to test it. Compile. Perfect. Now deploy. Let's pull this up. Okay, excellent. Now let's first and foremost check the value of paused. As you can see, it's false. Why? Because it's under the hood. It's under the hood set as paused as false here. Now, but you can't explicitly say it. But in Solidity, what happens is if you set a Boolean variable and then you don't initialize it with a value, it's basically set to false by default. So that's why it's paused here. It's false here, rather. It's false. So the value of paused is false. Now let's try to pause this function, this contract. As you can see, it succeeded, and now when we check the value of paused is true. Let's unpause. Succeed. Paused is now false. Perfect. Now let's check account. Let's check the account. Let's go to another account. As you can see, this is the account from which I have deployed this contract. Now when I check, so that means I've been set as the owner of the contract. This account is the owner of the contract. Now when I check, when I change account, and I try to pause this contract, as you can see, it's giving some errors, but it didn't succeed because I'm not the owner. Now one thing I forgot to show you is if you come here, you can see it's also a require statement, but it has two parameters. Now the require statement takes in two parameters, but the first one is the required one. Now the second parameter is basically the error message that will be sent to the user when it fails. Now for example, we can say here, we can say the contract is paused. We can say let's say sorry, the contract is paused. Let's say sorry, you are not the owner. So let's try to compile again. Perfect. Now let's delete this and deploy. Perfect. Now let me change account. Let me hit pause. Why was I able to pause this contract? Did I really change the account? Let's say pause. Unpause. Paused is false. Pause is true. Sorry, some things. Okay, I think, okay, let me change the account to this. Pause. Okay, so what happened was that I deployed the contract with a second account right here. So the second account is currently the owner. Now, so when I try to pause the contract with the first account, it says, it gives this error message, and it's a little bit more descriptive. It says, sorry, you're not the owner. You can see reason provided by the contract, sorry, you're not the owner. And that's why you are not able to pause the contract. Now when we try to unpause, it will give us the same thing. You're not the owner. But if we change the account to the owner of the contract and we pause, you can see that it has run successfully, and you can see the value of this is now okay, it's true. And if we unpause, you can see the value changes to false. Perfect. Now let's check the second thing, that is transferring some money requires the contract to be not paused. So let's try this. So the contract is currently paused. Now it's currently unpaused. Now let's pause it. And if you check, it's currently true. It's paused. Now let's try to send some ETH. Let's try to change to send some money. Okay, let's copy the address of this. And when we copy the address of this account, We change our account, and if we come here, you can see this transfer function requires two parameters or arguments. So let's say 1. So this is the address of the owner of the receiver, rather, that is 2, and this is the amount that we're going to send. So if we hit transfer, as you can see, it says, sorry, the contract is paused, so we are not able to transfer some money. But if we try to unpause it, let's change the account to the, okay, we are in the owner's account, I think. So unpause. Now if we unpause and hit transfer, you can see it now succeeds. Perfect.